this isn't worth it, or do you, yeah, what's your view?
Well, I'm pretty passionate about saving it, and like Pam says, I think getting it up, we don't want anything fancy. It's Petone. We're not bells and whistles. We just want something that we can get out on there, get out onto the ocean and do what we want to do on it. So I think, 10 for 15 maybe. I mean, it was 23 million not that long ago, sitting around here. So, yeah.
No, thank you. Appreciate that.
That's okay.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay. Barbara Scott. Welcome, Barbara.
Kia ora. Kia ora, everyone. Kia ora, councillors, Your Worship, the Mayor. My name is Barbara Scott. I am here also to tautoko Saving the Wharf. I represent my family. We've spent many hours, recently looking at the wharf, walking near it, swimming near it. One thing I've also done over the last couple of weeks is actually go out to a broader range of people as well, just because I was hearing a little bit of rumblings, and just going back to what some people said earlier about this foregone conclusion. It's kind of difficult to argue otherwise when the only options were to demolish the wharf in the LTP. So that is where some of that has come from as well. So people were advised to choose an option in the LTP, but then write below if you wanted to save the wharf. So yeah, I think if you're looking at those at the LTP and people are still choosing to demolish the wharf, that's because that was the only option written in those in the LTP. So some of the people that I've been talking to, I'm a dog walker and I use a lot of outdoor amenities in the hut. And so I kind of think I became the crazy dog lady, not the crazy cat lady, but the crazy dog lady, talking to dog walkers along that dog side. And if you've been to the dog beach since the new amenities have been built there, my perception is people are coming in larger numbers as well, now that that's opened again. And hitting people up and talking to them about the wharf. And I have been saying to them, if it was a like-for-like cost, the same cost to demolish it as what it would be to save it, what are your thoughts? And I think over that time, I must have spoken to about 100 people from the Hutt area and also outside the Greater Wellington region. I had 2 people that said, no, get rid of it. So I think just in terms before, as you were talking, that you've had these conflicting views. In my mind, there's no conflict. It seems to be very strong support from community and the wider community, not just Petone. It's not just, I don't see it as a Petone asset. I see it as a Wellington regional asset. Sorry, just refer to my notes here. Oh yes, so I want to chatted to some of the fisher folk down on the Pipe Bridge as well. Great bunch of people. I think they thought I was there to tell them off because I was a white lady with a clipboard. Admittedly, there's quite a diverse range of people on that Pipe Bridge, and not all of them I could communicate in their language, but the ones that I did told me stories about learning to fish off the wharf, going down to the wharf with wider communities and spending time there, like taking their fish and chips down there. And the bulk of them seem to have been taught to fish off Petone Wharf. So they drive to that wharf now. The ones that I spoke to, and I've written their names down, they said I could talk to their views. They drive there from further, like from Wainui, Taita, Stokes Valley, Nainai, and park up there. So I know it was talked that, some of these people would actually move off the Pipe Bridge once Te Ara Tupua is instated. Probably not going to happen if they then have to park there and then walk for ages out to those fishing places. So I see as having the wharf remediated and that head opened again, maybe that's going to ease some of the congestion down at the Pipe Bridge, which I know is a bit of an issue for walkers and cyclists and runners at the moment. I was quite moved by what Sally said earlier, talking about her mental health. And as somebody who also has experienced mental health issues my entire life, I love what nature brings me. And going out onto the wharf certainly enhances my hauora. I would liken the feeling that I get out at the end of the wharf to the feelings that I get when I'm up the top of Belmont Trig, up to Whiti Riser as well. But obviously the wharf is going to be a lot more accessible for a wider range of people as well. We don't see too many people on wheelchairs up the top of Belmont Trig. And we don't want to put stairs or anything up there either, do we? Oh, yes. Oh.
Final comments, that's fine.
I was just going to talk to Te Ara Tupua and the fact that that's going to bring more cycling tourism to the region as well, especially that opening up the Greater Harbour cycleway, and that would, you know, the wharf itself will be a point on that journey as well. But yeah, please save the wharf, please. I urge you. Thank you.
Thanks, Barbara. Any quick questions from members? No, really appreciate it. Thank you.
Ngā mihi, thank you.
Francis. Welcome, Francis. GK Shaw, page 235, your agenda. Just looping back. Floor's yours. Thanks.
Good afternoon. To save Petone Wharf, the council needs a plan that has a realistic outcome. You need confidence that the process will deliver an asset where the agreed scope of work will be completed in a realistic timeframe, on budget, and results in an asset that can be used by the community for the next 50 to 100 years. And the way forward is to completely refurbish or rebuild the approach and demolish the head of the wharf. Thank you for the opportunity to present my submission on Petone Wharf. My name is Francis. I work for a civil contracting firm based in Lower Hutt called GK Shaw Limited. I'm a civil engineer, a chartered professional engineer, and I have over 25 years experience in design and construction. Some quick background, GK Shaw has been refurbishing wharves throughout New Zealand for over 30 years. We rebuilt Rona Bay Wharf for Hutt City Council in 2018 and Seatoon Wharf for Wellington City Council in 2022. When Petone Wharf slumped half a metre in early 2021, we repaired 21 piles with FRP jackets and we re-levelled the deck. Our submission is based on actual construction figures from these projects to establish realistic costings to refurbish Petone Wharf. We believe the wharf approach, which is 275 metres long and about 4 metres wide, can be completely refurbished, and that means everything, the piles, the deck, structure, the handrails, everything, for around $9 million. Why spend millions year after year on a notified consent for demolition with endless consultant reports, hearings and consenting procedures tying up valuable council resources, a vocal community group and heritage advocates pushing back every step of the way, when for the same money you can fully refurbish 70% of the wharf? That sounds like a win-win situation to me. The new end of the wharf would still be in deep water for fishing and future berthing of vessels if required. The reduced length of the wharf at 275 metres still provides valuable amenity to the public. If it suited the council, there may be a way to spread the refurbishment over a number of years. This may be helpful for annual budget allocations or to promote the annual maintenance argument to minimise consenting requirements. A lot of work has already been done over the years on strengthening the wharf approach poles that will not need to be redone during a future refurbishment. Once the remaining critical poles are repaired, we believe the structure is currently quite safe for pedestrian loading in the short term until the refurbishment work is complete. A realistic scenario is as follows. After a first round of critical pole strengthening, around 20 poles, the 275 metres of wharf approach structure could be reopened to the public. The existing barrier can be moved to the wharf head. Each summer, the wharf is reopened to the public, and during the colder months, the wharf is temporarily shut down for 6 months while a contractor progressively rebuilds each span, working out from the esplanade end. Spending 25 million to completely refurbish or rebuild the entire wharf is not a realistic plan, given the current infrastructure demands on council finances. I hope you seriously consider our proposed solution. Thank you.
Thank you. And there's no doubt that this will be something we will look at with some interest. Do you just want to clearly define the difference between, you referenced the $25 million option of full refurbishment versus what you have put forward in your submission?
Yeah, okay, so the $9 million figure is a square metre rate based on about 1,200 square metres, which comes to about 9 million. That's a complete, fix the poles using FRP jackets, demolish the deck, put down new hardwood and a decking substrate over that. That could be concrete, timber, composite, which are three things that have actually been used on Rona Bay, Days Bay and Seatoon Wharf. So it would be an asset that's good for another 50 to 100 years. Essentially, the piles under the ground would be the remaining part, which will still be in perfectly good condition. And yeah, you'll have an asset that's good to go.
So, and we can certainly get our officials to comment on this, so don't feel as if you have to answer if you can't, but how is that different to the previous option, which council was pursuing before this long-term plan of the $25 million for refurbishment? What's the key difference?
Well, I think 25 million is realistic. If you take our construction rates and you apply them over the entire area of the wharf, which is about 2,200 square metres, it comes out to around 20 million. And then by the time you add on consenting, contingencies, you're at 25 million, which is a lot of money. But if you're going to be spending 6 million on a tier one company, construction company demolishing it, and all the demolition consenting processes, it should come out cost neutral.
So what you're saying is a similar approach to the $25 million option, but at a smaller scale.
Yeah, it's a like-for-like complete reconstruction with FRP jackets on the existing piles that takes you 275 metres out to the head of the wharf.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Lewis and Councillor Edwards.
Thank you, Francis. Good to see you. For the work that you did previously for the council, the 2021, was there consenting costs in the price that we heard that was around 400,000? Did you need consent to do that work?
No, that was just considered urgent maintenance, which means you can sort of just get in, you've got the ability with a dangerous structure to get in there and just do it straight away.
So would that be the same thing going forward with the repairs that are needed on the wharf?
That's what I suggested. If you stage the work and you just chip away at it, there may be ways to class that as maintenance work, because it's a like-for-like replacement. We're not doing anything different. We're not making it any bigger. You could, and if you have that ability, that promotes that sort of argument that you are just doing maintenance on an existing structure, and yeah. But yeah.
And if it came to, you speak to the officers, if councillors decide that they do want to support this asset, would you be open to, there's parties will come and tender for it, working with other parties to do the job?
Oh, essentially, we're always ready and willing to assist with any, we're across, there's a little bit more to just putting FRP jackets on piles when you're doing this wharf. That's only one small part of it. There's a lot more to it. And, we're across everything. We deal with all the consultants. We deal with all the consenting issues. We understand with a project of this value, whether it's staged or not, there needs to be a procurement process. But I think early contractor involvement in that process is absolutely essential to get the right outcomes for the council.
Councillor Edwards.
Yep, thank you for that. Just want to be crystal clear on what we're talking about. $9 million to do that, that 275 metre stem, I think it's been called, or approach.
Yep.
But what about the head? Demolition of the head, resource consent to demolish that head, or are you just going to leave the head there until it
Well, there's a few options there. If you say stage the approach work, and that might be done over 5 winters sort of thing, to say do 10 bays. There's about 50 bays, so you do about 10 every season. The approach, you just move the barrier back to there, obviously, to prevent people using it. It could be demolished, or you could just sort of defer that decision and maybe say, well, hey, the approach was a success. Can we do anything with the head? One thing we did at Payton Slip for Wellington City Council is they demolished that wharf. We actually left some piles in the water as a nod to the past, and they've set up some decorative panels to show, what it used to look like and what's there now, so you can sort of get some context. I also suggested in my written submission that, hey, even demolition doesn't have to be a negative thing. You could leave the piles there, which might be a positive for the aquifer, not having to disturb that, and perhaps, sink some boats in there, create artificial reefs, and which is good for marine life, and you maybe set up a diving recreational area. I know there's lots of options out there to, positive things that can, the wharf was originally constructed as a working wharf for the gear meet. It obviously is a recreational asset now, and you can do a number of things if you've got the imagination there to do it.
Any other, Councillor Mitchell?
Thank you. You did talk a little bit about demolition, the demolition option, and I think I heard you say that once you started adding in consent fees and things like that, it would come up to roughly the same amount. Is that right? Around $9 million?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm sort of saying, I think that there's a figure floating out there for around about 6 million that the council's thinking of budgeting for full demolition. My understanding is to do that, it would need to be a notified consent. That's going to be a process that's going to involve a lot of external, I imagine, consultants, lawyers, planners, as well as council staff, and I imagine that would drag over a number of years. And I can just see that, I don't know what those figures would be, but it wouldn't surprise me if you were getting close, you'd easily drop a few $1 million doing that.
So that's based more on your understanding than any actual demolition?
No,
we're
absolutely confident on the construction figures because we've got all the numbers to back up from past projects, and we've been doing this for over 30 years. So.
Okay, any other questions? Final one from me. We've been told by Roger Blakely that it's guaranteed $6 million for what they're proposing. Never received a guarantee before at this sort of stage in a process. Just wanted to clarify, because people are listening into these submissions, what that $9 million figure is based on, and I think you've made it clear it's an estimate.
It's based on historical projects that, Rona Bay was 2018, Seatoon was 2022. They've got different deck structures, but essentially it's the same construction methodology. I've averaged it, sort of allowed for 2024, and I've come out with a figure of 7,500 a square metre to basically completely rebuild that approach structure. That's us doing it. That's GK Shaw type small company with all the equipment and doing it our way. I'm surprised there was a guarantee there. I mean, I guess any contract you sign has a fixed amount, but at the end of the day, there'll be tags to that contract, and that's what the council has to have a clear understanding of what those tags are, because, like I said, there's a lot more to wharf construction than just fitting an FRP jacket. And I've had no discussions with Roger or Rockbond, but I can assure you their jacket, it's got a fancy name called Polymedic, but it is an FRP jacket, which is a generic name for a fibre reinforced polymer jacket. And we've been doing it for 30 years, and I'm quite happy to jump on a boat with Roger and look at the hundreds that we've installed around the hut and under the Wellington waterfront, and if he can find one that's failed, I'll buy him a coffee.
Cool. No, thank you.
Because he's not going to find one.
Okay, no, appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Really good stuff.
Thank you very much.
Okay, I'm just checking how members are going. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 speakers left. One speaker with 10 minutes. Does anyone need a quick 5-minute break? Yeah, if that's okay. I know you've been waiting, but we've just got to allow councillors to have a quick bathroom break. So, thank you very much.
Karen's helping out. I'm winning Lotto. I'm gonna fix everything. So you came to my file, eh? I don't think I've been called yet. I haven't been called yet.
Okay, thank you, everyone. We'll get underway. Thanks, Al, and thanks, Nick, for waiting and allowing us to have a bit of a bathroom break and a refresh. You'll be glad to know that we're fully aware now, and we've been re-energized, so we're looking forward to your submissions. So, Al, come forward. Shakira, welcome as well.
No, she's doing one by herself. So I'm going to do one first and then she's going to help with the other.
Great, okay.
Is that all right?
Yes, ma'am. Just start.
Okay. Look, I've been told what to do. I'm very sorry. Kia ora koutou. I'm here today as an individual with disability myself and with 3 children, 1 suspected disability and 2 with disability, 1 very high needs, all invisible disabilities, so you can't really tell that we have disability. So my submission today is mainly about disability. One of the things that I really want to see happen is I really want a disability advisory group given back to us to advise to the council. We as disability members of the public and of the community feel that we have no voice. We don't feel we're listened to, and we don't feel the council at times looks at disability through the lens it should be. I also feel, talking to others in the disability sector in Lower Hutt and around the Hutt Valley, that the council also needs to have a portfolio for disability on the council. I also feel that in other councils around New Zealand, there is also somebody that works for the council who has disability and deals with all the accessibility issues that people with disability have. I also find that there are issues out there in the community that I have to deal with that is not very easy. For example, the toilet situation out there for changing nappies and for older children and for adults is really ridiculous. I have to at times change my child in the middle, who's 7, in the middle of Walter Nash on the carpet, but so that she's not cold on the floor of the toilets. There is a toilet that is full accessibility that's up in Hamilton that was 100,000. Yes, I know it's a lot of money, but it could offer everything that an adult and everybody could use for changing a child or an adult. Our parks are not disability friendly either. They're not fenced, and plants just around the edge, like I said about 6 years ago to you guys, is not really holding ordinary children, let alone a lot of children with disabilities. We also need to make sure that all our staff are trained in inclusiveness and that they understand about what invisible disability is, and so that they understand that some of us need more support, or that we need more acceptance of when we go into your facilities. It is not very nice to have been thrown out of facilities this year in the last 6 years, and especially been thrown out for just taking some books off a library shelf. I found that really, really heartbreaking, and I couldn't go near libraries for another 6 months after that. I was so upset. All she was doing was trying to learn, and take the books off was her way of learning at that time. So all in all, I need you to take this seriously of what I'm saying. It's time that us as a community gets heard, and it's time that we have proper representation. Thank you.
Thank you, Al. Really powerful submission. Any questions?
Oh, gosh.
Councillor Dyer and Councillor Barrett.
Kia ora, thank you, Al, for coming in and making your presentation. In your submission, you said, I have an example of a park outside of Wellington that is working.
Yes.
What is that park?
There's a park up in Hamilton. I can't remember its name off the top of my head. It was open late last year, and it's really accessible. It's got lots of cool slides and swings and It's got a barbecue, it's got an accessible toilet close by, it's all fenced off. It's even got one of these corkboards that they can point to something to say for communication. Can't remember what they're called. One of my daughters has got one. Yeah. So
And is that the same example as the toilet that you mentioned?
yeah, that's
Same
up. It's all up that way. It's
Cool.
all up that part of the world. Yeah.
Kia ora, thank you so
But that
much.
was done not just with council. It was done with a lot of business and trust support to get it up the ground. Yeah. But I've got photos if you want them.
Yeah, I've been fortunate enough to go to that park, and it's escaped my name now, but it is fantastic. It's a great example, I think, leading in the country. Yeah. So thank you for raising that as an example. Councillor Barrett.
Kia ora, Al, and thank you for being so brave to come and share with us your disability, which is really important. I know how hard that can be. What I want to touch base with you, Al, is your part that you spoke about in the libraries. Mm-hmm. How best do you think that we can educate our staff or the people in different facilities around the Hutt City on silent disabilities?
I think they probably need to sit down and learn about it and maybe be spoken to by, people like me that deal with it or something like that. There's so many different types. It's very hard to know. But there was one time I actually had the courage, because I'm not very good at writing, because it's one of my disabilities, that I actually wrote to the council and said, hey, this is not good enough what just happened today in a different library, and something happened and that person got some training or some development. So she dealt with one of my children a lot better when she came back. So yeah. So does that helps?
Thank you. Councillor Morgan.
Kia ora. I think this is my first question over the last 2 days, so thank you. And I'll make it a question, so it's not a statement. Did you know that, from my understanding of learning a little bit more about the disabled community, that my understanding is there's 0.75 of a position that's currently vacant but will be filled, that their role is to support and look after and be focused on the disabled communities?
No.
So
I'll put my hand up.
I believe that's correct. 0.25. Oh, dang.
Oh, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
Disabled. My apologies. 0.25. I'll stand corrected. So yeah.
Okay.
So that's something exciting.
Great. Okay. Thank you, Al. So we'll move to the next submission.
Yep.
Claudelands Park, I think it is as well, as the park
Yep.
in Hamilton. Claudeland? Is that the same
Way
one?
you go. Get your speech.
Hi everyone, my name's Shakira. I'm 12 years old and I go to Naina Intermediate. Today I'm presenting to you guys, to the Hutt City Council, to convince you to bring back the Youth Council. I want to have the Youth Council back so I know my voice is heard, because as a 12-year-old in Lower Hutt, I feel that kids aren't listened to. I want to come back because it teaches teamwork, socialising skills, and it also helps to experience if you want to become for example, a politician, a council member, librarian, and many more. Mum, when you get older, it helps give skills as well. Bringing the leadership of schools in leaves out everyone else that wants to talk to the council. Not everyone has parents that will willingly take their children to council meetings if the youth council comes. Like this person who likes doing that a lot. Thank you for listening. Do you guys have any questions for me?
Any questions? Councillor Brown, then Councillor Morgan.
Kia ora, Shakira. Well done on your submission and bringing your whakaaro and your thoughts to us to listen to. And well done, Al, for coming and sharing your story. You've been in the community for many years on many different issues, so kia ora to that, kia ora to you. The last 2 days, we're at the tali now. Last 2 days, we've had a lot of submissions, and a lot of them have been about how we prioritise our money, the rates, your rates, my rates, how we best prioritise that, what's your highest priority, and how we do that without going any higher than the rates that are almost too high for some people.
and we know that. Where do you see accessible, if we were to, say, do accessible playgrounds or work on a youth council, where would that sit for both of you on where we should prioritise? How high? And I guess I'll ask you that, Al.
I'm not totally sure for money, but I feel that when we're doing maintenance or when we're planning new parks, that the disability focus needs to come out then. So if we're looking at maintenance, and I know there was a park being looked at recently, which I didn't submit in on Nainai, I can't remember, it's a new one down where the new pool's going, then that's the sort of time that we should be really looking at it seriously, I think. Does that answer your question? Go. But in regards to the youth council, I think that a youth council could be set up quite cheaply, and it wouldn't cost too much to the council. And I don't think they would want much in the terms of money, would you, to set it up and do it? Would you? She doesn't know, but yeah, I don't think a youth council would actually be too expensive for the council to set up and run.
Councillor Morgan?
Kia ora, thank you both once again. And Shakira, thank you for coming in. It takes a really brave soul, and it's so good hearing your voice, and it's so exciting because you are the now and you are the future, and you are in your city making your voice heard, which is super cool. Did you know that we have just endorsed what's called a rangatahi action plan, and part of that is doing our best to work with young people and youth, to engage with you, to talk with you, to hear your voice and get you as much as we can as part of what we can, to do everything we can to listen to you and hear what's going on. Do you think that's a good idea? Cool. Do you think it would be helpful to have someone, because I know we've got, just like I said before, we've got someone who's able to do some work with youth and come and maybe see schools and things like that. Do you think that's a good idea, to have someone who you can talk to, or maybe a point of contact that you can go, I know I can talk to that person, and then we can talk about what's important for you?
Yes, I think that would be very important, because it would mean that Mum, I think they can hear me.
No, it's online, so come on.
You're doing great.
Right.
I think that it would be very important, because it means that I know that not just the leadership of my school, such as Haora and house captains, aren't just the only ones that are being heard, so I know that I'm actually heard and not just them.
Just follow up. Do you think you're a leader right now in your city, here in Hutt City? Do you think you're a leader?
No.
Do you want to be?
Yes.
Great.
Very good. Thank you so much. Really appreciate you taking the time.
Bye-bye.
Awesome. I'm going to get nervous now when councillors start with a "Did you know?" That's a great way. You've just given Councillor Brow. I seen her write that down, and she heard you say that.
Did you know? Did you know?
No, so very good. No, that was excellent. Thank you, guys. Nick, welcome back. And thank you for your patience as well, Nick. I know we're about quite a bit behind now, so over to you.
Ano kia ora tātou katoa, ano Connick Sangaropoulos tōku ingoa. You're on the home straight now. Thanks for bearing with me for the last few minutes as well. My ambition is to be as articulate as the 10 and 11-year-olds that we've heard in the last few hours, who've been very, very impressive. The Petone Historical Society unreservedly supports the submission and the work undertaken by the Save Petone Wharf group. The Council's own studies have now documented the heritage values of the wharf, as has the Greater Wellington Regional Council. Our organisation has worked with the Council for many years on heritage matters and is disappointed at the Council's approach to this precious asset in terms of offering 2 demolition options in the long-term plan. We submitted previously that the work needed to be done on the wharf, but it was felt like the Council had taken a classic demolition by neglect approach when it explicitly delayed the work to the end of the decade in last year's annual plan. If that position wasn't bad enough for us, the Council then moved directly from neglect to demolition. The Council has statutory responsibilities under the RMA and the Local Government Act to protect the wharf as a listed item of heritage value. So instead, the council for us is seeking to bypass these responsibilities by undergoing a costly and uncertain process to seek consents for demolition. So based on what appears to be credible and effective ways of repairing the wharf at much lower cost than previously estimated, together with manageable future outlays, we along with at least 6,800 others, oppose any proposal to demolish this important heritage asset. We would just implore the council to carefully explore the alternative proposals that have been raised in these hearings. Turning to paid parking, the Jackson Street Heritage Precinct is a taonga that attracts many out-of-town shoppers. The street is vulnerable to any loss in occupancy, and which in turn relies on the economic vitality of its commercial businesses. The street is full of history and historic buildings, which is a selling point for the businesses and is a strong basis for community engagement and pride. So for the past 3 decades, successive councils have recognised the importance of Jackson Street and have enabled the street to maintain and promote itself through it being a special rating area. This has been well supported by local property owners who have benefited from the specialness of the area. Parking meters on Jackson Street is entirely contrary to the development of this taonga over recent times. It will likely undermine commercial confidence in the area, which is already extremely fragile. The cumulative impact of paid parking on top of other economic challenges, including sharp increases in rates and in particular very sharp increases in insurance costs, threaten future investment in the street's heritage buildings. This approach therefore also indirectly runs counter to the council's heritage policy. Turning now to the grandstand, Petone Recreation Grandstand. Petone, as was mentioned previously, is the cradle of champions. The Petone Rec Grandstand is associated with various sporting codes, and its design and history underpin its heritage credentials. We recognise that the council has been advised that there are structural issues with the building, but what we would say is whatever modification is to be undertaken should recognise the building does have heritage significance and should retain as much of the existing fabric as is possible. We would like to be consulted if possible with whatever modifications are proposed in the end. In conclusion, I'd like to start to say that Petone's well-being and prosperity are closely aligned with its heritage status. Each of these 3 proposals that I've touched on, individually, let alone collectively, has the potential to damage the economic vitality of this part of the city. And I just a little postscript, I've got plenty of time. I would just like to talk about what Mike Fisher said about decision-making on Petone matters by this council. The views of Petonians, I think, I believe the views of Petonians, particularly on paid parking and on the wharf, those 2 issues in particular, I think they're resoundingly clear. And I think, fundamentally, these issues really matter to Petonians and they will vote on them. So anō ngā mihi nui.
Any questions? Councillor Mitchell.
I can probably guess the answer to this one, Nick, but on Petone Wharf, we've heard a few options over the last couple of days, including restoration of the full wharf, severing of the head, removal of the head. What's the Historical Society's position?
The Historical Society's view is totally aligned with the Save Petone Wharf, which my understanding of it is that we should, at a minimum, proceed with the $6 million option. Or an option that covers what appears to be an option of $6 million that will achieve most of the effort that would be.
Yeah, my question isn't about budgets at all, actually. It's about the wharf and what's left of a wharf under those different options there.
So what is specifically the question, sorry?
Well, options we've heard include a restoration of the full extent of the wharf.
Yes.
Severing the head, removing the head. So in terms of physically, what we do with the wharf, what's the preference?
I think it's what I understand is the solution which will do the maximum for the least cost, which I believe is the option, the first option that Roger Blakely suggested would be probably the preferred option. But what I would say, or what I would really say is, please just investigate the options thoroughly rather than actually going ahead and demolishing the wharf. That would be my plea.
Thank you, Nick. Really appreciate it. And thank you for hanging around, or I'm not sure if you've managed to escape for a little bit.
I've just got to go and pay my parking fine now.
No, all good. And appreciate there has been some robust conversation. And what I would say in that is it's really important that we have these discussions because we want to be able to tease out. And if I hope you caught some of the other submissions because particularly myself have been just as sort of tough around interrogating what that means on both sides of the fence. So it's
and equally, I'd like to reciprocate that this is not a personal thing. It's a strongly held view, and it's not, so I want to reiterate that I recognise that everyone has got an extremely tough job here, and I was just legitimately telling you what I felt.
Absolutely, and that's what we want you to do. Yep. Thanks, Nick. Cheers. Okay, Laura. I believe online. Oh no, yeah, great, Laura, thanks.
Hi, thank you. I'm a long-term Petone resident and I've got a PowerPoint, so I'm just going to make sure this works. Yes, right. I think the proposed rates increases are not sustainable. Over the next 10 years, the average rates will go up by 250%. Some suburbs will have more than this if the rating changes, the value changes. A quarter of households only have a single occupant, like myself. That's a huge burden for a single person to keep paying. The proportion of residents over 65 is increasing and the pension is adjusted based on inflation. The government's trying to keep inflation at 4%, so we can't have these ridiculously high rates increases. Adding organic collection costs on top of that, I think is absolutely criminal. You can't do that when you've already got a base rate increase that is so high. So please do not consider this option. I don't support the rates relief for low-income people. So they already get subsidies from the government. There's already all sorts of other subsidies for low-income people. People like myself, I get nothing. Sorry to be, it's not all about me, but I'm just putting myself out there. I don't own a car, yet 20% of my rates go towards transport. So can I have that 20% back if I don't own a car, please? So I'm going to talk about the government policy statement on transport. I'm a transport planner, so I know a lot about the transport issues. The government has made it very clear in the GPS that spending on roads needs to be kept under control, no frills, sticking to core requirements. Road controlling authorities are also to do the same. I believe that council also needs to do the same in terms of rates. You need to stick to your core requirements, no frills. So this is not the way you run a business. Council is a business. It presently is being managed very poorly and it has done for previous councils as well. So not all you guys are responsible, but money has been spent in places that is not wise. We need to upgrade our infrastructure. Poor decisions have been made in the past and we have to learn from this and not do that in the future. So again, stick to core requirements, not nice to haves. The consultation document says that councils are limited in the ways they generate money. I have no disagreement with this, but they're not limited in how we spend it. We need to cut costs and stop spending money that you don't have. So the consultation document also makes this big thing about saving $35 million over the next 10 years. That's not enough. We need bigger savings and you guys need to do that. You need to be tough and you need to start to say no to things. The UK, councils are not allowed to increase rates above 5%. Wouldn't that be great if we had that in New Zealand? Without government approval. Birmingham Council has poorly performed and increased 2 years of rates increases at 21%. That's actually the same as what we've got. Yet in the UK, they're saying this is disgusting, this is unsustainable. How can this happen? Yet our councils, and I'm not only talking about Lower Hutt, the entire Wellington region are looking at doing this due to underspending in the past. Let's not be a Birmingham. So I've gone through the detailed stuff of the district plan. The long-term plan. First of all, I think we can make significant areas of saving in transport. Now, the GPS has come out and there is quite some changes that the present government is making. Anything that doesn't have a fast subsidy, and I'm assuming you know what I'm talking about, should not be constructed. There will be a lot of things that won't be covered in the GPS and it won't be in the National Land Transport Fund, including cycleways, speed changes, safety improvements, streetscape improvements. Transport projects with no fast subsidy should not be funded by council. The Cross Valley connection should be removed from council books because this is a road of national significance and the national government has said they will fund it 100%. So it shouldn't even be in the long-term plan. Residents shouldn't be subsidising town centre revitalisation projects, in particular Riverlink. If the businesses want it, they should be paying it through a targeted rates. I do support the riverbank flood protection done by the regional council, but not the additional nice to haves that Hutt City Council want. I'm talking about the promenade and those sorts of things. Again, those are things that are not subsidised by NZTA, so we shouldn't be doing it either. Renewals and improvements to halls should be paid from the charges that they receive from the users. I don't think council can afford to do any of these upgrades until the rate situation is reduced. Similarly, council cannot afford to make improvements on parks and open spaces. In terms of the wharf, I say reopen it with a sign saying it's unsafe in a major earthquake. My house is also potentially unsafe in a major earthquake. I still use it. Leave Petone grandstand. If the users of the Petone recreational grounds want changing rooms, they should provide it. It is used by a very small proportion of the population. I've added an extra note after listening to the children speak. If you shorten the wharf, the children can't jump off the end of it. I don't know if that helps answer your question in terms of the head of the wharf. Petone is very shallow and low tide, you have to walk for ages. This thing hasn't been working. Sorry. Anyway, I apologise. I was talking about the connectivity creation thing, now I've gone too far. This one here. So, I said again, these things are nice to have, not essential. Again, upgrades and renewals must become from the people that use them. For Petone Library, I think that it's shocking that the historic archives are still kept there. They should be relocated to the existing brand new main library. Keep the library the way it is. Yes, I've seen buckets in there. I go to Petone Library every day. But while the rates are such a problem, I don't think we can afford to have a new library. Right. So talking about, I agree with the previous speaker as well, I talked about climate change. If you look at the rubbish on our streets and the way people waste everything, if the public don't care about climate change, why should the council, why should we be spending money on that? Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, I've gone past one, never mind. The other one is about corporate services. I see that there's money there for more money spent in the administration building. I can't quite see what that is. I haven't read the fine print, but a lot of money was spent on this building a while ago. With the higher rates that you are charging, homeowners can't upgrade their houses, so why should we be upgrading yours? I think savings can be made in the way we do things. For example, the speed management plan that council undertook had 3 separate consultations. Only one was required through legislation. Again, I know all about the legislation for this. The council plan also went way beyond what the core legislation requirements were for, and that also increases implementation costs. So please don't do any more speed changes while the rates are ridiculous. If we want to put parking meters in Jackson Street, I personally don't care. But I do want to make sure that the parking revenue will cover the cost of installing them. As a Petone person who lives on a side street to Jackson Street, all my neighbours are concerned about the potential existing overflow. If a resident complains often enough they get no parking lines parked in front of their driveways, I actually think you need to do that to all the driveways in the side streets to Jackson Street if you introduce metered parking. In my final slide, I've just put together lots of letters to the editor just to say I'm not the only one who thinks like this, but in summary, council needs to make further cuts and cost savings. What you've proposed is not enough. The proposed rates increases are not sustainable. No one will be able to afford to live here if we keep doing what you're doing. It's great to see the young kids here, but with the rates increases you're proposing, they won't be able to pay rates when they're my age. Thank you.
Thanks, Laura. And can I just acknowledge, you've really taken some time to go through this. What we have heard throughout many of the submissions is that same sentiment that you raise around the rates increase, but not many examples of what we could be doing to reduce that. So I think you have quite, whether we agree or disagree, quite legitimately put a number of areas in front of us for consideration. And so thank you for doing that. I really want to acknowledge that. One question from me, and then I'll open it up. One area which wasn't touched on was water. And we know that probably 50% of the rates increase is around water infrastructure.
Yep.
And there is a plan, to change how we do that. But ultimately, we've got to deal with what's in front of us at the moment. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I haven't covered it because I agree that, and you'll see my written submission, infrastructure, water needs to be done. I mean, all these burst pipes are ridiculous. Now, I will want to say that I spoke here, I think 6-7 years ago. I spoke 2 years in a row with the annual plan because I was annoyed at the time how much my rates were increasing because Petone house prices were going up much faster than the average. And I did say at the time, I don't mind my rates increases, but I completely mind what you're spending it on. Because at that time, I said to everyone in this room that you need to be repairing our underground services. That did not happen. And now that we're in the situation that we are. I'm not saying it would have been a perfect situation, but it would still have cost. But we should have been doing it much earlier on. We shouldn't have been spending money on a 5-star hotel, new convention centres, all these nice to haves.
So your point is there is a level of rate increase we're going to have to bear to front
but
up
we
to
need
that.
to.
But the other things we should look at to bring it down.
We need to stop spending money on non-core things. Core things to me definitely is having everyone have access to drinking water.
Yep. Councillor Puckin.
Kia ora, Laura. Thank you for your presentation. Well thought out. You did mention in there that a lot of the things that we should cut are things that we are currently doing to meet our emission reduction targets. I was going to ask how do you suggest we meet them, but you said that in your submission that people aren't taking any notice of climate change. So given that you live in Petone and you're going to bear the brunt of sea level rise, I'm going to rephrase that question. How do you suggest we deal with sea level rise?
How long do I have to speak? Every time you read anything about climate change, for some reason, everyone in New Zealand always picks on Petone. I don't know why, but whenever there's talk about managed retreat, it's always Petone's mentioned and one or two other suburbs in the country, but it's always Petone. I am in a situation that I don't have children, and I say to everyone, I'm glad I don't have children. I will be living in my house till probably the waves come over it. I don't really know the answer to that question. I know that my insurance is going to potentially become ridiculously high and potentially I will stop insuring. I would like to find an insurance company that I can just do fire and theft and not worry about the client. I will take that risk on myself because I don't think it's going to be a major risk. Dare I say, you know me, Chris, you know that I've got a vegetable garden and my front lawn is slowly disappearing as I grow more and more vegetables. So, I mean, I consider myself to be very sustainable and green, but I do also know that the general population do not consider what they do. I'm going to get very personal now. I was dating a guy earlier in this year who ran the tap and carried on running it and going, it doesn't matter. We've got water from an aquifer. It doesn't matter. We don't need to do water cuts. And I'm like, oh, no, you can't do that. So everyone lives their own way. What I see is that the general public actually don't want to change how they do things. I walked here today, so I've walked here from Petone. Like I said, I don't have a car. Everyone still drives 10 times a day. They're still focused on all these things that they don't care about climate change, really. No one's prepared to make any of their own sacrifices, so why should councils be spending money on that? Sorry, I've gone on a bit too much, but...
No, it's very insightful. It's good. It's good. Councillor Short and Councillor Mitchell.
Oh, thanks, Laura, and thanks for your attention to detail over those budgets. We probably should let you have a go at our budgets. We might save a couple of $100 million while we're at it. And it's good to hear that the Net's going to pay 100% for Cross Valley, so that's good for us too as well. But mine was a climate change question as well too, and surely we as governors have a responsibility for, you know, future focused thinking, even if our residents don't. What's your view on that?
How did that turn off? Apologies. The other thing that's also come to mind is that in the UK, my brother lives in London, I'm totally aware that a lot of the climate change ideas they're actually pulling back on because they realise it's a huge cost. I've also suggested to my friends, and I did write a letter to the editor and it was published in the Dominion Post to say that actually the Greens should be talking to the National Party. The pure environmental stuff that the Greens want costs money, and the National Party is better at getting the economy going to pay for those things rather than the Labour government. Yeah, I don't know if that actually answers your question, but with all these high cost rises, we cannot continue to keep spending money on things that we don't, that are nice to haves.
Okay, was it final one over here, Councillor Mitchell?
Yeah, in your proposal, I guess an underlining theme was quite a significant shift from ratepayers' pay to users' pay in many different elements of life. Do you think lower families and businesses would be better off if we structured everything as user pays instead of paying through general rates?
I think if everything was user pays, people have a better understanding of where their money goes. Yes.
Thank you. And just a cheeky one to end up on, but who should pay for all those yellow lines on residential streets in Petone?
Well, as I said, I haven't had a car since 2016, so last 8 years, 20% of my rates every year goes towards roads. Spend that money.
Thank you very much, Laura. Really appreciate your candour and the time you've taken on this as well.
That's
So,
okay.
and I do, as soon as you mention it, I do remember your presentations from quite a while ago. So they were pretty good.
I don't know if you remember, but during your election campaign to become mayor, we actually sat down and talked about my previous presentations.
Cross Valley Connection, and yep, that's right. I remember it.
Thank you.
Great, Daniel. Hey, thank you so much, Daniel, for waiting.
It's okay. Tēnā koutou katoa, ko Daniel Jones aho. And Your Honour, councillors, thank you very much for allowing me to speak so late in the session. I know it's already been a long one. So this is going to be just a short presentation in support of the proposal to introduce organic green and food waste collection, which is contained in the consultation document. So it's a submission made on behalf of the Korakora Environmental Group. As many of you know, we've been really involved as a group, as a sort of local community in supporting household composting, community composting at a really small scale. And a lot of our members, like myself, are pretty committed household composters. Nevertheless, we really strongly support this proposal, and I'll just explain briefly why. So to explain why, I'm just going to address one of the comments that's made in the consultation document. So in your consultation document at page 19, you set out a lot of the pros and cons of the proposal. And one of the disadvantages of the proposal you mention is the document says people in our community who already compost, that would include myself, their food and garden waste at home, will pay for something they may not fully utilise. So my response to that, and I think the response of many of our members, is that those who are already committed to home composting to reduce their food waste are going to be some of the biggest supporters of this proposal, because we really appreciate how difficult it is to reduce your food waste on an individual basis or on a small scale community basis. And although we do our best, we really appreciate the fact that ultimately to significantly reduce the emissions from food waste in Lower Hutt, there has to be an at-scale rates-funded service, as so many other councils around the world, local governments around the world already provide. So some of the difficulties that our members encounter are, you've got a young family and you've got kids. It's very difficult to find the time to do your endless experimenting with the compost bin, including the inevitable battle to keep the rats out. Some of our members are older. Once upon a time, they were enthusiastic composters. Now they can't. Those with disabilities can't. Those outside Korokoro living, on the flat in high density areas, if you've got a flat, you probably can't. If you're in a house without a significant garden, you might not have the kind of carbon resources to do it. So all of those impediments to just doing it all yourself are indications not that people don't care about climate change, but there's only so much they can do by themselves. And even those of us who do really enthusiastically compost, and my wife always complains I spend far too much time at the compost bin, probably right. Even us, we struggle to compost all of the family food waste. Even we would significantly use this service. So we think this service would be a huge benefit to the community. We don't see it as a frill or an optional extra. It's an essential public service to make sure we responsibly deal with our waste as a city, that we start to tackle the food waste that's currently ending up in the landfill and contributing towards climate change. So I really welcome the proposal. We do as a group, and we would encourage you to press ahead with it. And thank you very much for listening to this presentation.
Thank you so much, Daniel. Really appreciate it. Any questions? No. Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. That is all of our submitters. And thanks again, Daniel, for, I know we were running a bit behind there, so I appreciate you waiting. No, well done, everyone. Now, what we'll do is go around the room. We obviously haven't had a chance today, but if there's any questions that you'd like to raise, anything that's possible for the team to pull together for tomorrow, keeping in mind the papers that we're considering tomorrow, but we're not going to keep the team here until 5 a.m, so just be mindful of any requests for that. But of course, with some things, we're going to need a little bit of time, and we've, of course, got the 4th and 5th of June. So who wants to kick off? Yep, Naomi.
Third day in a row. Oh, second day in a row, sorry. Yeah, we've had quite a variety today, quite different from yesterday. But there were a couple that struck with me. One of them was Mike Yates. I can't find my notes here. He was Lower Hutt Soccer speaking about the gym. From what I'm aware, they're not a founding member of Fraser Park, but it seems like everybody's jumped onto some cheap gym use. But more importantly, the community they serve and the large number of groups that they've got using it, along with the boxing people from yesterday, I think means that we have to really have a good look at how we can keep that as an option. And the other one was Derek Wilshire. He popped up with a photo of our adult fitness thingy, which I thought would be really great for Pōmari Park if that was a possibility as it undergoes development. I had others, I can't find them. I'll come back to you. Oh, the other one was Daniel Crisp, I think, his challenge to us to think further ahead about Urapa space in the Hutt Valley has some merit. Akatara was going to be there for, I can't remember how many years. They've got a couple of stages to develop, but I think we need to look a little bit further ahead and see if there is some viable land here for a cemetery so we can at least have our people in our own area. Thank you.
Linda?
Thank you. Can I just very quickly address something that Naomi's just said? My understanding about the Urapas in the Hutt City is that the water table has risen too high in the Hutt City to find any viable land now. That was my understanding anyway.
Oh, there are spaces available. It's just a matter of sorting them out. Yeah.
Where they are. Yeah. Okay, so a couple of things. Please, can we research Alan Brown's costings, where he said we could do the wharf, reduce the stem or something for about $1 million. He's pretty certain on that. Is there any way we can find out if that is absolutely correct? Secondly, I know that the man that just talked a wee while ago about the $9 million, saying that the $9 million to refurbish the wharf in its entirety. do we get them, I know we have a contract, if that was the case, do we have, is it written in that contract that if prices go up, that we pay no more than that $9 million, because that's what we've been guaranteed on? And third, the access toilet that was just brought up by Al, I've brought this up many times over the years, and I haven't been given an answer as to what costing that would encompass. We're talking about a toilet with a hoist in it for adult children as well. Could that be looked at, please?
So I think it might be, Andrea might be able to respond to a couple of things now, and then, yep.
Sure. So in terms of the accessible toilet and the hoist, there is one going in at Nainai Pool, but there's also one going in at Bay Street in Petone. It's costing $800,000, so it's a lot more than 100,000. So that's what it's costing, but that is the totally fully accessible with the hoist where you can have an adult. So that's, we're working with the changing places people on that, so it'll meet their specifications. On the wharf, I don't think we can provide any more information between now and tomorrow on the wharf. And I think that a lot of I think really you're at a point of really principles on how you approach the wharf, and then it would be direction on how we go and get more detail. But there are just, I think we're up to about option 16, and in terms of all the options that have been put forward in the last year. So I think we probably need a firmer direction before we go and get any more detail on anything to do with the wharf. Was there something else? What was your middle one?
That was Alan Brown's costing.
Yes.
The $9 million
That's wharf. So the contract, no, our contracts would always, so what we do with the contracts now, the good thing is we do a QRA, which we didn't used to do, which means that we build in on top of the normal contingency, we build in another part of budget, which covers us on a lot of risks, which would be those kinds of things where a project costs more than we expect.
Can I just sound the wharf, just so we hopefully don't need to repeat each other? What would be good from councillors to think about overnight is around, as Andrea says, the principles. So what level of money are we talking if we were looking to retain the wharf in some way? And what type of retention I think is important. So I think just with all those different options that have come through, it can be a little bit confusing, but I think we just be clear around a couple of things, which then we could potentially ask officials to go away on as well. Does that help? Yeah. Yep. Okay. Just so people can maybe sharpen their mind on what we focus on tomorrow.
Can I just add, I agree with that exactly, but I just think there's been some real misinformation and some confusion around figures and guarantees and what does that mean, and so I think that's makes it quite convoluted, so just, yeah. But
yeah,
just sharing that. And unfortunately, we've got a whole lot of people who believe something, which is not necessarily correct.
Yeah, and I think the team could. Well, do you want to comment on this guarantee issue?
Well, there is nothing we have held back from you. We have shared with you what we've shared. You can see for yourselves whether there were, and I'm conscious, we would put that proposal out openly, but we have to respect the wishes of the people who've provided it to us in confidence. But I can't see, and I don't think any of you can see in there the word guarantee. However, the Mayor in the chair today very specifically asked that question, and there was a fairly clear response that guarantee is there. Well, what I have to go on and what we have to give you advice on is the proposals that have been put forward from the company that the people are saying there's a guarantee from, who are very clearly saying there isn't. Quite understandably, because commercially they'd be a bit brave to do that. It's you can see they say things like we need divers reports, subject to.
Yeah. Okay. So we'll keep going around. So I'll kind of just go this way now. A few hands come up. Councillor Dyer.
Cool. A couple from me. A few people brought up this Cross Valley link and National Road of Significance, and obviously there's no guaranteed funding yet. But it'd be good just to have a bit of clarity around the numbers we do have in our budget, what they are actually for, because I know the CVL is a lot more than just a big highway across the valley, and the others 188 numbers, Esplanade improvements and stuff that won't actually come out of our budget, even if National says we're building.
No, we've got it.
Yeah.
Cool. Some clarity on the community house funding future. There's a lot of questions there. Are we proposing to do some of the things that they seem to think we might be?
Do you want to comment on that, Andrea?
Sure. In the LTP, we were consulting on our broad approach of greater cost recovery and optimising existing with the opportunity to divest a small number of buildings, and that's what we were consulting on. We had talked to you about potential increases of 30%, which wouldn't be relevant to the community houses because currently they don't pay anything. Their rent is forgiven. But what we would be doing if the approach is agreed, we'd be bringing you back a proposal on this is what we think greater cost recovery and optimisation of buildings looks like for this set of assets. The community houses would have a chance to have their say again at that time, and there'd be a decision made by the Community Culture and Partnership Committee about that.
Just absolute clarity, there is, I was quite confused by that around the 30%. I understand maybe where their confusion has come from, but there is no proposal specifically on them.
And they came to the War Memorial session that we held and really thought that they were closed next week. So it was good to give them the reassurance then that, hey, we're not proposing.
No, that's right. That's right.
Cool.
Okay.
Next one was around the science kits. Obviously, this is shared with Upper Hutt City Council. Do we know if they're proposing to cut their half of it? It'd be good to have a bit more clarity around the science kits.
The short answer is yes.
Yes, the money, and look, I've already spoken to James when I went out in the break. Yes, they've cut the money. The money that you had in the budget was for more than the kits. It does appear to be the kits that the schools seem to be valuing. We do have some stock, which would probably get over another year, finding out a little bit more about that. But Hutt's, but Upper Hutt have cut that budget.
Cool, that was all for me. Thanks,
So
everyone.
maybe just on that, it'd be good to have some information on the providing of the kit, but not necessarily that other. So what does that look like?
Yeah. So what I've asked James to do is look at what we have and how we can give that to schools. Actually, part of the way we did it before was I think we did all the delivery. Well, I think if schools really want them, I'm sure they could manage to get them. We'll look at what we can do. It would be crazy to have stock that would be valued and not pass it out to people.
That's good. Okay. Yep. Anything? That's it? Great.
Oh, kia ora. Just following up on that Science Hut. Yeah, it's a shame we haven't got some of our organisers, and it's not our role or anyone's role, but to connect with like bad timing, but Callaghan Innovation and some of those, areas that could absolutely fund that for those kids. There's a number of places. Just want to touch on one thing, Your Worship, Campbell Barry, on the disabled component. When I quoted 0.75, it's because I have that in an email from you. So just saying, repeating what I was told. So, but thanks for the clarity, Andrea. So that's all cool. For me, just a couple of little things actually, because we've got so much money going into all of this stuff, big dollars, but I quite like some of the simple ideas that I think you will have factored in already, but like the little clear signs for the bikers and the little things we can do in our city to make everyone feel valued and included. And around that well-being, I really love that adult park stuff that we could pop into some of our work and into places, because when I link with Rangatahi, that's what they're saying. They're saying they want more adult type activities that they can do in their city. So I think that all combines of those little things, just keeping on top. I'm just going to do a plug for that at Rangatahi. I think you heard those kids today and you're all moved and they're so amazing and they are blooming amazing. But without someone really driving that work in that space to hear them and to get them involved and to be that person, and I know we've got funding, we've got an awesome strategic action plan there, sitting there, ready to go. So I'm just going to put that plug in there. And my last thing is for that parking, which is just now such a massive issue. I'm not sure what that looks like citywide, so I'm just sharing what does that look like as a city as opposed to just area and area. So thanks, good work everybody.
Okay, on parking, could we also just for Friday, hopefully this should be there, if we were to remove paid parking in Jackson Street, what impact would that have on the budget? And if there was a need to obviously increase the rates from the revenue we wouldn't gather for that, what does that look like? Yep, great. Oh, it is in there, sorry, okay, apologies. Councillor Parkin.
Kia ora. So the boat shed, just assurance that that's in our asset management plan review, and what the impact on that is, would be useful to hear from officers. Beach nourishment, both of these were from Stephen Greenside. Do we have anything in there for refreshing the sand? I presume it's refreshing the sand in terms of the beach nourishment. Is it needed? Urban Plus and Wellington Water in terms of the living wage conversation. Where do we go from here? I can see that being put somewhere outside of the LTP, but just, yeah, tied in at some point. The science kits, as a teacher, reflecting on that and thinking that, yes, the kids value the kits because that's the piece that they see. But as a trained secondary school teacher and science teacher, I had the background knowledge to be able to use those kits. I strongly suggest that we talk to the teachers about whether or not they can deliver them without our support, because the kits themselves may not actually be useful. And we did ask officers to talk to places like Callaghan as to whether or not they could support the funding for that delivery mode. But we now know that central government has pulled back way back on that. And I wonder whether or not we're actually making the right decision at that point. Alan Brown's proposal and the practicalities of that earthquake break between the head and the stem of the wharf, I would love to know if it's feasible, but I also understand from officers how many things that we've had towards the wharf, and yeah, we probably just need to look at that from how much are we willing to spend, and then getting the best version of that out at this point. So, thank you.
Just on living wage.
On the living wage, it's been in our letter of expectation to our CCO since 2022. That's what you have decided. And when we come up for reaccreditation, I'm sure that we'll reflect that more accurately. But there's nothing in there that, as I can see at the minute, that actually goes against your policy of that and goes against that matter that you've placed in the letter of expectation. Just on the science things, very briefly, there are hui that have taken place, but officers aren't securing a different way of delivering something. We've now, just want to be clear, that's not something we've promised to do, but we have encouraged people to get together, and those hui have taken place.
Gabriel?
Most of the questions have been answered, but I think it's interesting the past couple of days to sort of connect the dots, as in the Citizens Advice Bureau yesterday. Then we had, I think it's Tamlin and Sally Ann Moffat speak to the Petone Community House. I think Sally Ann said something along the lines of there's some sort of mutual agreement or understanding or arrangement. I don't know if there's an MOU or a historical relationship with the council on what those deliverables are, but I think there's a broader conversation here between some of those service providers on how they can collaborate, where the usual expected level of funding may no longer be available moving forward. So I think, there's a broader conversation there to be had.
Councillor Sargent.
The only thing I'm a bit interested in, and perhaps if I had a look I'd find it, but there's a few comments about water meters and about the timing of when they might be introduced by people that weren't necessarily opposed to it, but just thinking, I can't recall when the timing was, so it'd be useful to know that if it's not apparent from the papers. That's it.
Yep. We can have some. Bruce, yep.
So from memory, the water meters are fairly early on for us. First year is some seeding money for a trial and to do a bit more work in terms of looking at the costs. And then years 2, 3 and 2 to 6, I think they are, that the implementation occurs.
Just then, perhaps in addition to that, it would just be interesting to know any implications from a different timing. There'll be a reason why that timing was chosen, and if we don't have a response now, sometime
yeah,
would be helpful.
I think we can get some. There is some good information from Wellington Water around, basically an investor save that you get from water meters, which probably, I think, as a resident, if you're looking at these issues, probably is very hard to, unless you really dig deep in that information. So probably quite helpful, Bruce, to have that with us as we make that decision.
Yeah, so we can recirculate the information. It was circulated to councillors earlier this year, so it was dated December 23. Yeah.
I think that would be good. Yeah. Cool. Okay, Councillor Shaw. That's right. Councillor Edwards.
No, I'm done too. Most of the questions have been answered. I've got lots of questions about the wharf, but I think your guidance that we're onto high principles now for tomorrow. There's really no more time to have more information. I think that's the correct guidance. Very interested in the gym at Fraser Park, but it sounds like our officers are well onto that and well advanced with the discussion. So they were my two.
Any comments on that, Andrea? Just around, I mean, I did push them quite firmly around being, we're all on the same page around expectations of the building if we were to give it back. But I mean, where have the conversations been at on that particular matter?
We are providing a number of different costs for them to have a look at, and also the requirements that we would have if we were to divest. And there were things like we would like an asbestos report, because these are the things, these assets have been left to go into disrepair because we were demolishing them. So they haven't had all the usual repair that they would have. And so the things that we would be doing if we were keeping them, an asbestos report, and then what comes out of that, you need to fund what comes out of that. Also the seismic reports, and again, what comes out of that you need to do. The other complication there is that there are 3 buildings. Council owns the end 2 and intends to demolish them, and then there's the middle section that they're hoping that we will divest. If we start the work on the outside 2 and there are any issues around those in terms of structural relationship to the other building or asbestos, that would impact that main building. So we're trying to be as proactive as we can, but we recognise there are quite a few hurdles that we have to get over there. I think, and generally probably what you heard, one of the things you heard is that there's very high expectation in the sports sector, and we hear that often, very high expectation about what council will provide, but the recent work that we did around, principles around investing in sport and rec were about our fundamental role is in mass participation, providing fields and toilets so that people can participate. But this level of expectation of having other things is there in the sports sector, and unfortunately there's only so much that council can provide.
Andrea, do we agree that there is sufficient ablutions and changing room facilities if that building goes? That a couple of those sports clubs said a number of times you can't possibly have on the busy days when there's a lot of sport on, there is not enough toilets, changing rooms to look after that. Where do we sit on that?
Well, the plan before, to demolish the buildings was based on the fact that new toilets and more toilets were being provided in the Rico Sports Centre building. So those toilets are there now. So if the other ones were to disappear, we've actually still got more than we had previously. Whether there should be more on a sports ground that size is another question, but we have got a higher level than we've had previously.
Deputy Mayor Lewis.
Thank you. Good to hear, that we are going out to do the thing with the wharf. Could we also consider, still working with the Petone Group? They offered to, fundraise and do things.
Just clarity. Well, we haven't made any decisions.
For the engineering report, if it needs all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, we haven't made any decisions yet.
But if it goes that way, yeah. That's all. Sorry, jumping the gun. The report on Mirren Buckers as well, I think Karen brought that up, the signage, it's simple stuff, and I think it should be looked at. And also with parking on Jackson Street, historically we were going to look at coupon parking, and I don't know what ever happened to that, and just, for the future, could we investigate that for Petone especially? Oh, and accessibility from Al, and I'd like to know what it is in our design process through parks and reserves. Is there a model that everything gets filtered through, assessed when they're doing projects?
I can answer that one now. So yes, there is. I think in the past it's probably been a little bit ad hoc, but certainly now in the Nainai Pool Park and Community Centre, we've had disability advocates in the groups, and also in the Avalon Skate Park you would have seen as well, a really strong input into the design phase from the relevant disability groups. So certainly it's part of the process now.
Okay, just a few from me. Living wage rate 27.80 from 1st September, that's incorporated into our budgets.
Yes, it is. It's one of the reasons why we explained that staffing costs have gone up, amongst many others, of course, whilst looking at the P&L line for the whole budget.
Okay. the other one for me was the parking fees at Riverbank, just from Hamish's submission, and just to, I think, if that's not already in the report, just a reminder of what that fee increase is, and I know that that's only for a certain period of time, because obviously Riverlink's going to have a big impact on what we can collect there anyway. But just I think it's a reminder of what is being proposed there.
We can do that, and I think we've previously given you a reminder of what the parking situation is in other CBDs, so that's probably useful as well.
Okay. Everything else has been covered by the team. Councillor Briggs, yep. Oh, sorry, yes, Councillor Briggs, yeah.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just a question of clarity for you, Joe, just around the living wage in our CCOs. Has that letter of expectation also covered off Wellington Water, or is it a different conversation that can be started post LTP?
I'm aware with Wellington Water, because we had a specific issue arise this year, that we require them to use their contractors to pay the living wage for people who are working on our stuff. There was an issue that arose earlier this year that suggested that some people weren't being paid the living wage. They were being paid the living wage in our bit, but not necessarily across the whole of the rohi. But our rohi. So, yeah, so I don't know if that helps. And the other bit that goes with that is, yeah, that's enough for now.
So I think the big target is that as it's too early in this stage, but as a new entity starts to take shape, some expectations from the shareholding, or the councils who own it and iwi around things like that's going to be quite key. So that's the conversation we can have with the Living Wage Network to sort of put that on their radar as well. Councillor Brown.
The three things for me anyway is the support that came through strong developers and all things Petone. With the developers, one of them brought up a really a couple of good points about the community housing providers. So just that we can get that taken on board. I think in Petone, the parking, no questions on it. I don't have any questions on it. The wharf, I'm at principles too. The most legit one I heard today around costs is GK Shaw. But if it was GK Shaw what he was offering, what would that cost for us? But above that, I'm still at principles, because my bigger question when I talk principles is what's implications for future? Could we be loading up the future for something unknown? So that's probably a principles discussion tomorrow. And I did have one other question. So community funding, that's pretty sorted, but a couple of things came through. We're funding groups like Citizens Advice. We've got 2 places. We need to sort of, I just get a position again on what's our position on whether we would fund, and the community houses in that, why we're funding some and we're not funding the others. There's plenty of organisations in the hut that pay for their own premises. So what's our position? That we did this with sport, but what's our position with funding community situations? And I point to the community houses, groups like CAB, where there's 2 of them. Central government wouldn't even fund that. So, yeah, what's our position on those things? And I don't know if we can get that by tomorrow.
Andrea, do you want to comment on that? I think we did kind of touch on that yesterday.
I think that's probably something that'll come through when we're talking about community funding, but also as the asset work continues, there'll be an opportunity to look at the principles around that for each set of assets.
I was really surprised that Mike Fisher talked about saying, put in the political of a threat of saying we'll get voted out. We go against, the wharf, when he's been very involved in it, even with Petone 2040. So I just want to note that, and I'll probably tell him myself.
You probably just told him on Facebook. No. Councillor Mitchell, then Councillor Barrett. Yep.
Most of what I noted down today has been covered. Just a quick question, Andrew. I think you mentioned it about those community houses. Are they all on the same model where they don't pay rent currently?
Yes, I think so. But I think there are other similar organisations that aren't. Yeah. It's consistency we need to have a look at.
Thank you. Regarding the living wage and CCOs, I think it was really a question of whether we already do it or whether they already do it, our CCOs. Getting a nod over here about Urban Plus, so it's possibly just a simple question to them of whether they already meet the criteria, and if not, how much of a shift is required to get them there. And then one for Bruce, you said you're going to bring back some information about water meters and I guess that kind of the business case side of things, and just checking in that will incorporate, it came in quite late, the operating cost of those water meters was added in a bit late to our calculation. So yeah, just if we're providing information again, if that could be factored in.
Yep. Sorry, we'll go Councillor Barrett, then come back.
Sorry, just one that I missed out, and this was from the Larry Bay Residents Association. I think his name is Stephen, mentioned that up in Upper Cheviot Road there is no footpath. It's very dangerous there. And also at one part there, they've got a ramp instead of steps that are proving to be too slippery, especially in wet weather. Has that been looked at? Is there any reasoning for that? Or
I think in relation, declare my interest as a Larry Bay resident and a user of the beach. What he was saying is that there are currently steps, and the proposal is to replace that with a ramp. And he was concerned about that. But then, of course, you've heard from people around accessibility, and steps don't work for people in wheelchairs and prams, and frequently people on sticks. So, as we replace things, we are building in accessibility as we go along, and that was the plan for that. So we just need to, I think, give people some confidence around non-slippiness.
I think there are special mats that you can use. I know working in the disability sector that straight concrete can be very, very slippery and can cause more damage. So it needs, the surface of the concrete needs to be roughened so that it's not. Yeah, thank you.
We can come back on that. And John was nodding on the footpath as well. So got comment now then, yeah.
Yeah, just quickly, we will investigate Upper Cheviot. I'm not sure if the team have done that recently. So, and just to reiterate what Joe said, the consent conditions were for a ramp because of accessibility. So that's why the design has gone down that track. But we'll take on board, we'll make sure there is best practice being displayed, but we'll make sure that that's taken into account.
Cool. Karen.
Kia ora. And this has actually been raised already, but just to stress the point, because it was raised over the last few days around McEwen Park and Nuku Ora around the toilets and changing rooms. And I know when we've got money, we look at priorities and what we can do. But I just want to signal more for the councillors, because I think the team are totally onto it. But those things like changing rooms are the biggest reason why rangatahi and youth don't play sport. The biggest reason, which seems outrageous. So if we factor that into our thinking, it can change that whole wellbeing space. So thanks.
Sorry, Councillor Mitchell, why did I skip you? Did I skip you? Is it? It's because I think you topped the questions today, so I just thought I'd skip you a couple of times. Close. Was there anything else? No.
No, I was just replying to your question. Urban Plus does pay living wage. The question is around the outliers of Urban Plus, like the cleaners of the building who are not connected to us, but they're connected to Urban Plus. So all the groups connected to them.
Yeah, okay. Okay, we'll get some information back just for some clarity on where exactly we're at. Yeah. Okay, anything else from submissions wider that you've read in preparation? So obviously it's not just the ones who are presented, but I'm not going to go all the way around again. It's sort of by exception. So anything, Deputy Mayor?
That was just, we had heard about FOGO, the very last submission, and we also heard from Raywyn Hales, and I think she mentioned to the opposite, the costing of it. So it would be good to have some, I don't know, that is it the cost, or is it what, if we don't do it now, FOGO, and can that come in later?
Yep. Anything? Yep.
Can we make sure we definitely factor in E2's request of cutting their funding for the next 3 years? E2 Sculpture Trust?
Oh, it's already been taken.
Oh, it's already been taken. Oh, is that right?
Yeah, so they've endorsed it. I think it's really important though, because I really respect the way they approach that, and I think just as a direction from all of us is, particularly with Riverlink, other major projects, we want to work alongside them because there's going to be so much opportunity to utilise their skills there. Yeah.
Well, I'm hoping you're leaving a bridge in, and we need to think about the form and function of things and how beautiful they can look, and not just utilitarian as we go along too. So for sure, particularly around that landscaping as we move beyond that.
I did have a question around process though. Like, obviously we've got 1,700 submissions. We've read a few hundred of them for today and yesterday. Is there a time frame or indication of when we would like feedback on written submissions?
I've read all 1,700. You should have read all of them for today. It's the no. Look, if there's look, I know there was a lot, and if there is anything that has come from that, send it through to elected members' requests. Obviously, it won't be in time for tomorrow, but yeah, but just be mindful of that. I don't want people to create a laundry list of every single request that's come through. Make sure it is focused on some key decisions that we are going to have to make as well. Yep.
So I'm going to say also every submitter does get a written response from us in time. And just a reminder about that overall analysis you received earlier in the week that kind of will help you group some of those 1,700 together.
Yeah, cool.
So my question was just to check that the E2 funding has been scheduled back in 2027 as well.
Yes. No? No. No, I didn't. Yeah, no. I think that was I think that was Councillor Parkin's request, but we said no to that. I think that was.
We can bring it into you tomorrow.
Yeah, I don't think we need to, because if it's not there, it's not there. And the conversation will be at the next LTP with the council at the time. Yeah, it's a bit academic in my view. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Very good. Excellent. Thanks, everyone. Enjoy. I'm looking forward to all of the lobbying that will go on between each other as you work through the issues. No. No, we just need to close the meeting. And just before I formally close, understanding orders 10.9, Chief Executive has withdrawn the public excluded submission from Fraser Park Sportsville. So just noting that, if I hadn't earlier. But finally, can I just say a big thank you to all of the members of the public who submitted through this process. We'll get an opportunity to do that as we make our decisions, but particularly for everyone who made the effort to be here in person, for obviously they're giving up their own time, potentially getting away from work or time with their families. We really do appreciate that, and also those who zoomed in. It's been incredibly valuable and I think really constructive throughout. So thanks to them. And I know I can share that on behalf of everyone. Okay, so we'll go to our closing karakia. Please feel free to join me. Unuhia, unuhia, unuhia e te uru tapu nui, kia wātia, kia mama, tēnā kau, te tina, te waru e te ata katakatu. Koia re o rongo, whakeeri, ki kionga, kia wātia, ara, ku wātia, hau, paumarie. Thanks everyone.